Hi everyone, my name is Mahi. My presentation is about influenza. First, the purpose and the objectives of this presentation is information and educational purposes to raise awareness and knowledge about what is influenza, how many types are there, transmission, signs and symptoms, diagnosis and treatment and prevention. And here is the table of contents. What is influenza? Types of influenza, origin and history. How serious is influenza? Some clarification. Transmission, signs and symptoms, risky factors, life cycle, diagnosis, treatment, prevention, and vaccination. According to CDC, influenza is highly infectious viral illness. It is known as flu, which is a contagious respiratory illness caused by influenza viruses that infect the nose, throat, and sometimes the lungs. It can cause mild to severe illness, and at times it can lead to death. Influenza is a single-stranded, helically-shaped RNA virus of the orthomyxovirus family. Basic antigen types are A, B, and C are determined by the nuclear material. Timing of influenza season varies from October to January, sometimes in May. Types of influenza viruses, which are A, B, and C. Influenza A causes moderate to severe illness and affects all age groups. The virus infects humans and other animals. Influenza A viruses are perpetuated in nature by wild birds, predominantly water flow. Most of these viruses are not pathogenic to their natural host and do not change or evolve. Influenza B generally causes milder disease than type A and primarily affects children. Influenza B is more stable than influenza A, with less antigenic drift and consequent immunologic stability. It affects only humans. Influenza C is rarely reported as a cause of human illness, probably because most causes are subclinical. It has not been associated with epidemic disease. Influenza A and B viruses cause seasonal epidemics of disease in humans, known as the flu season almost every winter in the United States. The origin and the history. The name influenza originated in 15th century in Italy from an epidemic attributed to influence of the stars. The first pandemic or worldwide epidemic that clearly fits the description of influenza was in 1580. At least 4 pandemics of influenza occurred in 19th century and 3 occurred in the 20th century. In 1936, Burnet discovered that influenza virus could be grown in embryonated hen's eggs. The first live attenuated influenza vaccine was licensed in 2003. The 1918 influenza pandemic was the most severe pandemic in recent history. It was caused by an H1N1 virus with genes of avian origin. Spread worldwide during 1918 to 1919. In the United States, it was first identified in military personnel in spring 1918. One-third of the world's population became infected with the virus. Number of deaths was estimated to be at least 50 million worldwide, with about 675,000 occurring in the United States. Mortality was high in people younger than 5 years old, 20 to 40 years old, and 65 years and older. Isolation, quarantine, good personal hygiene, use of disinfectants, and limitations of public gatherings were applied before inventing any vaccine. How serious is influenza? Some individuals are at higher risk of developing complications from influenza, including seniors, infants, young children, adults, and children with existing chronic health conditions, healthy pregnant women, indigenous peoples, obese persons. Complications can include pneumonia, it could be bacterial or viral, ear and sinus infections, and dehydration. Some clarification. Influenza A viruses are the only influenza viruses known to cause flu pandemics, global epidemics of flu disease. A pandemic can occur when a new and very different influenza A virus emerges that both infects people and can spread efficiently between people. Influenza A viruses are divided into subtypes based on two proteins in the surface of the virus, hemagglutinin and neuraminidase. Current subtypes of influenza A viruses that routinely circulate in people include AH1N1 and AH3N2. Understanding the naming of flu viruses. The name starts with the virus type, followed by the place the virus was isolated, followed by the virus strain number, the year isolated, and finally the virus subtype. Transmission. Two major mechanisms of transportation such as person-to-person and fomites. Person-to-person transmission occur by infected droplets when people cough, sneeze, talk, and touch mouth. Fomites is object or material like table, furniture, and clothes. Influenza can also be transmitted by fomites when infected droplets stays on those particular fomite surfaces. Signs and symptoms are fever, cough, sore throat, runny or stuffy nose, sneezing, watery eyes, muscle or body aches, headaches, fatigue, sometimes vomiting, and diarrhea, though this is more common in children than adults. Risk factors are chronic lung diseases such as asthma, bronchiectasis, heart disease, chronic kidney disease, diabetes, and liver disorder. Influenza virus type A life cycle. Influenza virus genome is single-stranded negative RNA. Genome is segmented with 8 strands of negative RNA evolved in two key proteins such as hemagglutinin and neuraminidase. Exposed by respiratory droplets infects epithelial cells in upper respiratory tract. Hemagglutinin binds to sialic acid on respiratory epithelial cells and transfer into the cell by receptor-mediated endocytosis and puts into the endosome. HA binds to the cell first, then endocytosis occurs and M2 proteins uncoats, then viral replication occurs, then new virus assembled, NA buds and releases. Diagnosis: symptoms alone are not helpful to know for sure if a person has the flu, which is why doctor needs to do the laboratory tests such as rapid influenza diagnostic test, which work by detecting the parts of the virus antigens that stimulate an immune response. Such tests can provide results within approximately 10 to 15 minutes. Rapid molecular assays that detect genetic material of the virus. Rapid molecular assays produce results in 15 to 20 minutes and are more accurate than RIDTS. Also, healthcare providers swipe the inside of nose or the back of throat with a swab and then send the swab for testing. Results may take 1 hour or several hours. The treatment of influenza virus could be a flu vaccine is the best way to help prevent seasonal flu and its potentially serious complications. Bed rest and plenty of fluids in order to treat the flu is basic treatment. Antiviral drug as a second line of defense in the form of pills, liquid and inhaled powder, or an intravenous solution. Antiviral drugs work best for treatment when they are started within 2 days of getting sick. Some of them are as follows: Tamiflu, Relenza, Repiva, Zofloza. We can prevent it by washing our hands with regular soap. It doesn't have to be antibacterial soap. Rub hands vigorously for at least 20 seconds, covering all surfaces. Rinse hands under running water. Dry hands with clean or disposable towel. Use hand sanitizer in outdoors. Cover mouth and nose with a tissue before sneezing or coughing. If tissue is not available, sneeze or cough on upper sleeve. Throw the used tissue into the waste basket. Do not touch face without washing hands. A person should get flu vaccine every year because strains of the influenza virus change every year and new vaccines are produced to counter them as soon as they are identified. The immunization one person had last year will likely not be effective against this year's virus, even if the person have avoided getting influenza so far. It doesn't mean that the person will not get sick this year. By not getting the influenza immunization, a person can increase the chances of becoming ill. Common reactions to the vaccines are injection site redness, swelling, pain, fatigue, headache, myalgia, arthralgia, fever, chills, and malaise. The burden of influenza diseases in the United States can vary widely and is determined by a number of factors, including the characteristics of circulating viruses, the timing of the season, how well the vaccine is working to protect against illness, and how many people got vaccinated. While the impact of flu varies, it places a substantial burden on the health of people in the United States each year. Patients hospitalized with laboratory-confirmed influenza in New York on the last week of January 2020. Hospitals in New York State and New York City report that the number of hospitalized patients with laboratory-confirmed influenza is 99%. There are some questions. What have you learned from this presentation? What type of influenza viruses cause seasonal flu? What are the signs and symptoms of influenza? Should a person get influenza vaccine every year? Here are the answers for you. These are the references. These are the image reference list. Thank you for watching.